ตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะพุทธังธัมมังสังฆังนัมมัสสามิ One of the side effects of the COVID virus pandemic is that the world is a lot quieter than before. So tonight the monastery is very quiet, the road is silent, there's no aeroplanes flying overhead, the wind has died down, the moon is up, there's no clouds in the sky. So even though it's cold, it's very conducive to the practice of meditation and contemplating the Dhamma. When we say contemplate the Dhamma, this word Dhamma sometimes causes confusion or doubt for people because it's not used widely in our society, being a non-Buddhist society. Means the truth, or the truth of the way things are. So when we chant, part of our chanting is praising and recollecting the Buddha, who realized the Dhamma, so his mind penetrated the truth of the way things are. We recollect the Dhamma, so the qualities of the truth, and we recollect the Sangha, those people who have practiced and realized the truth, and particularly the way of practice, the way they practiced and the kind of qualities they developed in order to realize truth. And we're aspiring to develop those same qualities for ourselves. But truth, or the truth we need to understand, will vary in the sense that where we're at in our life and the state of mind we have, our knowledge and understanding of the Dhamma varies from time to time, person to person. And so when we're practicing, we're building on, you might say, building different qualities, cultivating different qualities that will help us to understand the truth. But sometimes we emphasize different things according to where we're at. I remember one time there's this story, this man came to Luang Por Chah and he was complaining to Ajahn Chah, said, I've been coming here for many years listening to you. When I was a young man, you kept hammering on about how I've got to work hard, be honest, learn to get on with other people, take responsibility for my life, look after my family, my parents, my children. And you would go on and on about this, and not to squander my wealth, not to drink, not to gamble, to be careful with money and so on. But then lately, when I come to see you, all you ever talk about is how everything is impermanent, everything is suffering, everything is not self. Nothing belongs to me, everything has to be let go of because it doesn't belong to me, it's all impermanent. And he said, it's not fair. All those years I was building up my wealth and looking after my family and trying to do my best, and now you're saying nothing belongs to me anyway and it's all impermanent. It's not fair. So he's complaining a bit. But Ajahn Chah was like this. He would talk about different things at different times, talk about the Dhamma from different angles. And he said sometimes we need to hear the basics, sometimes we're ready to hear more advanced Dhamma, deeper Dhamma, but it depends on the person and where they're at in their life and their practice. But what the teacher's job is, whether it's a monk or a nun or a friend, is to impart and encourage the development of right view, sammaditthi. And right view, there's many levels of that. There's what we call mundane right view, the worldly right view, particularly getting to understand the law of karma and accepting this as a way of looking at the world. Everything that we do intentionally, our intentional actions, speech and thoughts, they have consequences, they have results. Good thought, good result. Bad thought, unskillful thought, bad result, meaning suffering. So mundane right view is built around this, just recognizing the importance of making good karma, because it develops the mind in a good way. We develop good qualities of mind that help to bring us a sense of inner well-being and happiness, just through our actions, our speech, the way we are interacting with the world, and mentally as well, the way we think, our attitudes. Seeing the value of that. So, say the Buddha would emphasize, mundane right view, ordinary right view means recognizing the value of the practice of generosity, giving, supporting samanas, religious people, spiritual people, but also sharing what you have with others, particularly those who are less fortunate, supporting the sick, supporting our family, our parents, just recognizing the value of that. And there's many other things we could talk about, but just recognizing the value that our actions do have results, and the quality of our life and how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about the world, will depend on that. So it's worthwhile investing time and energy in developing good karma. In Buddhism we have this phrase, merit, making merit, which is often sort of denigrated as just going to a temple and making an offering, requesting a blessing, participating in a ceremony. And on the outside, it may involve that. But of course the Buddha or Ajahn Chah, they're pointing to the inner qualities of the mind we're developing. So making merit is developing the quality of generosity and non-attachment. In the beginning, just to material things, knowing how to share, knowing how to let go of attachment, possessiveness, stinginess, for example. So making merit is like this. We say it's a cleansing process. You're cleansing your mind of more negative qualities when you bring up a meritorious thought or perform a meritorious action. Not only are you doing something good and cultivating a good quality, but at the same time you're letting go of something more negative, which is a cause of inner stress and suffering. That's how we're practicing merit. So even though it does sometimes involve ceremonies, activities, charitable activities, volunteering, whatever, the purpose of it in Buddhism is always to cleanse the mind, so to help the mind grow internally, partly by cultivating the good, wholesome aspect, and partly by abandoning the more negative quality. Same with virtuous conduct or keeping precepts. You're both undertaking, say, to abandon the intention to harm oneself or others through one's speech, one's action. And as one undertakes keeping precepts, say 5 precepts or 8 precepts. One is abandoning the opposite qualities, the more selfish qualities that lead us to physically harm others, humans or creatures, to not respect others' property, steal or take or cheat others out of their property, encouraging us to abandon the desire to commit acts of sexual misconduct, harmful sex, and then to respect relationships, one's partner or the partners of others, to abandon the intention to lie or deceive or abuse others in one's speech, and then at the same time cultivate the intention to practice honesty, kindness in one's speech, abandoning the intention to take drink or drugs, and at the same time cultivating mindfulness, clarity, sobriety. These are things we call making merit, practicing generosity, keeping precepts, but they have a purpose. They're cleansing the mind. And so they say it's like, before one can accept some of the deeper truths of life that are also part of the Dhamma, that are going to help us to free our mind from stress and suffering, we have to prepare the mind. And this is why these parts of the practice of generosity, keeping precepts, are valuable. They say for monks, our robes, often we make robes out of white cloth, sew it together, and then we dye it. Traditionally in natural dyes, so like jackfruit, wood from the jackfruit tree. Nowadays maybe chemical dyes to get the orangey brown colour. But everyone who does that, they know before you can dye cloth, you have to make sure it's clean, free of grease and dirt, so that it can accept the dye. So they talk about making merit like this. You're preparing your mind to receive the deeper truths that the Buddha was pointing to. What we call the super mundane right view, being able to see and view the world in terms of its universal characteristics. It is an impermanent place. Both physical, mental phenomena are impermanent. It's unsatisfactory. The things of this world cannot give us permanent happiness, lasting happiness. And they're not self. We can't own them, have them. This body, this mind, we don't own them. They don't belong to us. They go according to causes and conditions. These deeper truths are hard to accept, so one has to prepare the mind to accept them, just like one has to prepare that cloth before you can dye it. So what we call mundane right view leads on preparing the mind, cleansing the mind, to the development of super mundane right view, or transcendental right view, the way of seeing the world according to the Dhamma, according to the way things are, and accepting it. We can all read the Dhamma and listen to the Dhamma and understand it intellectually, but whether our heart yet understands it or not is a different question. And as long as we are still caught into wrong views, wrong understanding of reality, well, our heart will reflect that, and we will get annoyed with things, angry with things, upset. We will suffer, we will get sad, experience grief, despair, disappointment, depression, and so on. These states of suffering will arise as long as our mind has not yet seen the truth of things. So the Buddhist path that we're developing is very much a path of preparing the mind to receive the truth. So you might say the mind is a bit like a vessel. And another way Ajahn Chah used to talk about it, you've got to clean if you want to eat some food, you get a clean plate first. You don't pick up a plate that hasn't been washed for 3 days or 10 days or something and then put food on it. Normally speaking, you don't do that. You clean your plate so you can eat your food and it's healthy and nutritious for you. Well, in the same way, our mind, we need to clean it and prepare it, get it ready to accept some of these deeper truths, because often we hear the words, but the mind doesn't really accept them. So like that man, perhaps Luang Por Chah saw that when he was younger, stronger, and going out to work to earn money, to build up himself, build up his family and do things, perhaps he wasn't yet ready to, at that point, to accept the truth of impermanence, say. But as we get older, maybe it makes more sense. Physically, as we change, mentally, we've got more experience of the world, then some of these truths the Buddha was pointing to start to become more obvious to us, and maybe our heart can accept them. So this is why the Buddha started with his teaching, encouraging people to understand what is merit or demerit, or good and bad. And perhaps just learning how to be a successful human being. So like a human being in the way the Buddha meant isn't just physically having a human body, having a human birth, but also means having the mind of a human being. Those qualities that make us human, because they're not necessarily established well in our mind when we begin practicing. We are hopefully most of the time human, but sometimes we get lost, and we can experience deep states of suffering and unhappiness, or following wrong views. We can do very harmful things to ourselves and others, and you might say erode away or lose some of our humanity. So the word in Buddhism for human is manusa. Manusa means a being with a well-developed mind, and that means a mind that has developed certain qualities that make us human. So quality of, say, kindness, compassion, an awareness of what is good and evil, or good and bad karma, and then acting accordingly to try and develop the good, avoid the unwholesome, making unwholesome karma. These sort of basic human qualities are what we're developing to develop the inner human. And the opposite, when we lose those qualities, we're going away from our humanity. So when we give in to anger all the time, or cruelty in our behavior, or selfishness, greed, there's like that, at that point, at that moment, we're kind of losing our humanity. This is something to keep reflecting on. Sammaditthi, right view, is something you have to keep coming back to over and over again every day, as a way of looking at the world and developing the path out of stress and suffering. So just looking at one's own qualities as a human being, how well are they developed? How strong are they? How firmly established in our mind are they? How easily are we shaken by events? And it's understandable sometimes events in life are challenging. Something like this coronavirus, when a lot of people lose work, lose their job, or lose their income, or even catch the illness. They're put under pressure. That would be a challenge for, I say, as a Buddhist response. How would you respond? You try to maintain your right view under that pressure. So say you lose your job, or you lose your income, some of your income. Can you maintain your humanity as you're experiencing that? This is the challenge of the practice, because even though life is full of challenges and difficulties, doesn't mean to say that we have to lose our sammaditthi as well. And the Buddha was encouraging us to see this is our real treasure as a human being, this ability to think, to learn from experience, to understand our experience in terms of good and bad, and what is for our real benefit and progress and what is not, and then act accordingly. And even under pressure, like turmoil or conflict or illness or economic decline or whatever it may be, Your real refuge is always right view, how to train your mind to view it correctly, what is going on, whether we're talking about the world around us or just our own individual experience of the world. And the more we value the practice of making merit, practicing generosity in different ways, developing kindness and compassion in daily life, harmlessness as a way, as a mode of living. Generally, the results of that is we get this sense of well-being, inner well-being coming up, little by little. And this has this cleansing effect to remove some of the worst excesses of our behavior. We probably all made all kinds of mistakes and done things that we regret in the past, but once you're on the path practicing, developing samadhi, then you're developing that intention and that resolve to abandon or change that way of behavior, however long it takes. And the result is you get this sense of inner well-being, happiness, like the clean piece of cloth. Your mind is cleaned up a little bit, shed some of its more unskillful intentions and behavior. Then it's ready to receive perhaps much more profound Dhamma that previously we weren't really ready to acknowledge or recognize. So that leads on to what leads to the super mundane right view or the transcendental right view that really helps us to free our mind from stress, suffering. Well, seeing the four and penetrating the Four Noble Truths, and particularly coming to see the three characteristics of phenomena. When it's applied to yourself, we say this body is impermanent. What is impermanent is subject to degeneration, decline, and it's not a self. Because a self, we say, is something that you can hold on to and have and control and make how you like. People used to ask Ajahn Kalyano, they say, well, we practice meditation, what should we contemplate? He said, well, when you're peaceful, contemplate the body. And it's probably the last thing we want to contemplate, which is why we're all still unenlightened. It's not what our mind automatically looks for, is to contemplate this body to develop awareness on the body, understanding of the body. It's not what our society promotes. Nobody goes around saying, oh, contemplate your body, to see it in light of the three characteristics. Society, culture goes in the opposite way. From day one, when we're born into the world, we're kind of herded towards a view, just unconsciously, automatically. It's not some conspiracy or master plan, but just unconsciously we do it to each other. We're constantly pushing each other towards a view that the body is something we have to make look good, look nice, feel good, make it the way we want. It's an expression of our individuality, who we are. And from day one, from when we're little kids through our life, that tends to be how we go, isn't it? So we build up straight away this identification with the body as a self, me, mine, myself, and as something that, because it's me, mine, myself, something that is permanent, you could say we take it for granted, and we build up a lot of wrong views based on this attachment to the body. We have a sort of expectation that it should always work properly. A bit like buying a car and never putting water in it or oil in the engine, and never getting it serviced. You put your petrol in, you drive your car around, and then one day it breaks down and completely gone because you never maintained it properly. Bodies are a bit like that. We feed it, we clothe it, we put water in, but we don't really look at it more deeply, understand it more deeply. We think we know this body, but we just walk around expecting it just to carry on with nothing going wrong, bringing us to where we want to go, doing what we want to do with it to get our happiness, get our pleasures. And then, of course, when it can't always do that because its characteristic is impermanent, unsatisfactory and not self, we get upset, we get disappointed, frustrated, angry, depressed, afraid. Coronavirus, as many other things, it just points that out to us, doesn't it? How much anxiety do we have about whether we'll catch it or not? And there's so many other diseases we could catch. The nature of the body is it is vulnerable. But because of our delusion, we don't see that, we don't question that, we don't look more deeply, we just take it for granted and go around. As long as it's working fine, that's good. As soon as something goes wrong, we're unhappy. And that's been going on for so long now. From day one, we've been clothing it, so the way we clothe it becomes the important thing, not the fact that, this body is vulnerable to heat and cold, and it needs clothing for good health. It's more just the fashion, the kind of clothing expressing who you are. That becomes more important to us. How we style the hair, how we clothe it, the various ways we decorate it. So now everybody gets tattoos and ear piercings and whatever it may be, and we style our hair and colour our hair and so on. All of that is really, it's just reinforcing wrong view, the view that the body is something that is permanent, controllable, and hiding the truth from us, at least for a while. And we go on like that. And unless we stop and start taking a closer look at this body, we keep falling into that delusion. So when things do go wrong, it catches us by surprise, and we don't like it. So usually in the beginning it's small things, isn't it? Small signs of aging, or small aches and pains, small illnesses, little things go wrong and we're not happy. But maybe if the majority of the body and the way it feels is okay, we kind of get by and we don't worry about it too much. But sometimes through some periods of our life, things get worse, more intense. The pain gets more intense, or the aging becomes more obvious. And so then, if we have never contemplated this, then it starts to catch us out, and we maybe feel disappointed. We can't do what we used to be able to do. We can't dance like we used to dance, or run like we used to run. We can't lift things the way we used to lift them, and so on. Little by little, aging creeps up on us. And if we're not careful, this is what drags the mind down with it, because we haven't contemplated the body, the impermanence of it. As I said, it's not a popular subject to contemplate the impermanence of this body. We try to avoid it, we push it away, so we'll cover up the blemishes, we'll try to ignore the aches and pains, we'll style it, clothe it, clean it, try and make it as good as we can. This is why it's such a fruitful area to contemplate. And it's not necessarily something that's very difficult to do. It's just taking the time to be a bit more aware of your body, but aware in terms of Dhamma. We're often aware of our body, how it looks, and then again, that's a source of suffering, isn't it? Someone was saying yesterday that they're building a tower block in Melbourne shaped like a woman's body, with the curves of the body. It's like that, isn't it? When your curves are in the right places, you're happy, but as you get older, maybe they're not in the right places, or they go the wrong shape, or too big, or whatever, and we become unhappy. It's so subtle, it's so unconscious in our society, the way we identify with a body, what we think looks good, how it should look, how our body should look, how the bodies of others should look. it's constantly affecting us without us really knowing, unless we investigate this. So this evening we chanted the chant on the 32 parts of the body. It's a very good way, the Buddha said, to develop mindfulness of the body and contemplate it, to see the truth of it, to develop right view, rather than living in the fantasy world of the brochures and the pictures and the external media. Rather bring your attention back to the way it is. And, the body has its attractive side, but probably if you're honest, if you observe it and investigate it more closely, you come to a conclusion that majority of the body is not that attractive. It's only because we put so much effort into keeping it clean, clothed, styled, getting it the way we want, that we don't notice. It doesn't catch up with us, as it were. But if you sit down and contemplate your body a little bit, or just notice it through your day, you can't help but start noticing, this body isn't quite how I would like, is it? It's constantly bringing us different kinds of suffering. So we get hungry, we get tired, we feel too cold, we feel too hot with it. Our hair keeps growing, and as it grows, it gets greasy, it gets dusty. So we have to keep washing it. And the amount of money we spend on our hair. Somebody went the other day and they said, want to get a haircut like a monk. So they went, and it still cost $10. $10 just to get all their hair completely shaved off. So that means as a monk, I've been a monk, 36 years, lived in the monastery 37 years, $10. I shave my head every 2 weeks, so it's a year, 26 times, $260 a year, so nearly 40 years. Oh, I'm talking about over $10,000, I think. I've saved that. Not styling my hair, not going to a barber, wasting a lot of money on the hair. It's like that, isn't it? Sometimes it's worth sitting down and getting the statistics out, how much you've spent on your hair and hair products and hairstyling over your lifetime, however old you are. How much you spend on clothes, you've always got to be changing the clothes, washing the clothes, making them look good. As a monk, one set of clothes, very cheap, very simple. It's like that, isn't it? When you sit down and contemplate it, you start to realize, I'm really a slave to this identification with the body, always making it look good, trying to make it feel good, smell good. And it's constantly disappointing us because, you wash your hair, very soon the grease and the dirt makes it smell again. Sometimes it's very quick. You move around, you exercise, you sweat, so your body starts to have odor. You eat food, you spend all that time earning money to buy food, cook food, and you eat it. Even in the eating, it's tiring, isn't it? Chewing food, chew, chew, chew. If you're not mindful, you don't notice that. You're just caught up in the enjoyment of the food, say. But if you are mindful and you take it as a practice, what's it like? Eating food, it means you have to chew to get it down. If you don't chew properly, things get stuck in your throat or you get indigestion. Sometimes you're chewing, you bite the side of your mouth, so you get a little cut. Sometimes you break your tooth on something, you're over-ambitious and you crunch into something and break a tooth or crack a tooth. Even just eating can bring a lot of difficulty with it. And on it goes, doesn't it? You eat and then you've got to digest it, and sometimes you get indigestion, you're over full and you feel tired. It goes through the body, then you've got to go to the toilet. You constantly got to be going to the toilet. And you've got to keep your toilet clean, otherwise it smells. On and on it goes. Someone was saying a good way to keep social distancing while you're experiencing the coronavirus pandemic is get some horse poo, or if you're living in the monastery, maybe some wombat poo, and just spread it on your hands. then nobody will want to shake hands with you, nobody will want to come near you, and you won't even want to touch your face, touch your mouth. Poo is like that, isn't it? But where did it come from? Poo comes from bodies. You have a body, it makes things come out of it. Poo, urine, grease, sweat, snot, earwax. Contemplating the body doesn't mean creating anything special, it just means observing the way things are, because this is Dhamma. And it's not what we want, is it? It doesn't sell well. You don't hear this talked about much in the world, but you might as well hear it in the monastery because it can help us. It can sober us up, brighten up the mind, because we realize, the body itself is not a real refuge. It's not our real source of happiness. I remember one time going to give a talk in Melbourne to a group who weren't particularly Buddhist, they're just people interested to find out about Buddhism. And after the talk, they said, it's such a relief to be with people who have shaved heads and just wear their robes. You can relax. You don't have to look at how your clothes are. You don't have to worry about your hair, whether you're having a bad hair day or anything when you're in a monastery or you're with monastics. You can let go of all that. And that's the truth, isn't it? We spend so much time in the way preparing the way we look and projecting our self-identity onto other people just through how we look and how this body is. It's a big relief to be able to put that down. So like in a monastery, you come in, if you're a layperson, you wear white maybe, if you're a monk, you wear brown. In the monastery, you don't have to worry about fashion, makeup, jewelry, shampoos, hairstyles. You can put all that to rest. And so people do. Some do it for their whole life, some for part of their life, some for the course of a retreat. And it's a nice rest for the mind not to have to be so obsessed with the body. And what it is also doing is setting your mind up for wisdom, the deeper wisdom, accepting the fact, this body, it won't last forever. It's not a real seat of happiness. It's not, as you get older, it's going to bring you less happiness and more problems, more issues, more suffering. So in terms of right view, this is how our merit or our good karma develops. In the beginning, maybe it is just learning to make ends meet, get yourself established in the world, get a job. That can be practicing the Dhamma as well. But as you go on in life, you're also going through to contemplate the deeper truths that, this body, it won't last. It's not something that you can really expect very much from. What can you expect from your body? You can expect it will get old, get sick and die. There's really not much good news the older we get in having a human body. But it's whether your mind can accept that truth and step back from its automatic identification and all the loves and hates based around that identification with the body as a self. When your mind becomes more peaceful and you contemplate this truth, then you start to be at ease inside, internally. So it doesn't matter so much whether your hair is having a good day or a bad day, whether you've got your best clothes on or not, or even illness when it does come, and sooner or later it probably will come. You can deal with it better because and this is just an affair of the body, and the body is just the body, and this is what it does. Sometimes it's healthy, if the causes and conditions are right, it's healthy. But causes and conditions change, it's not healthy, and you maybe catch a virus or you get some internal disorder or injury. This can happen too. But mentally you can understand that, you can accept that when you've developed this ability to contemplate your experience and look at it as Dhamma. Your body is just teaching you the Dhamma really every day. It's saying, this body is only so good. It smells, bits of it don't look good, doesn't always feel very good, it's getting older every day. One day it will drop dead for whatever reason. This is an education. You're educating your mind to see the nature of reality. And then it extends out to the rest of the world. What you see in your own body and understand it is impermanent, suffering, not self. Everyone else is the same. So strangely enough, contemplating the body tends to give rise to a lot of kindness and compassion, because the more you understand yourself, the more you understand other people, and we're all in the same situation in this world. This is like the transcendental right view. You start to see whatever phenomena in this world, physical or mental, it doesn't last. It's not a true refuge. The real refuge is the Dhamma that is well trained in the mind that is well trained coming to see the Dhamma. The more you can see the impermanence of your own body, then whatever else you're experiencing in this world, you're starting to see in the same light. You're noticing it's temporary. You build something, create something, it's there for a while, but then it starts to degenerate as soon as you've created it, built it, said it, done it, had it. Whatever aspect of life you're looking at, you're seeing these features, these characteristics are there. So your mind is constantly coming to see the Dhamma in whatever it's involved with. In the end, the Dhamma is what persists. The truth is what persists. And if we brought our mind to the Dhamma, then it's in line with that which persists, continues. In that sense, one can get real solidity in the world, solidity in the mind, in terms of a mind that is not shaken by experience, not shaken by the temporary nature of this world, physical or mental, not shaken by the dukkha of the world, the degeneration of the world, not shaken by the fact that everything ultimately I can't control, I can't have, I can't make it do what I want. Thinking about wombats in the monastery, I remember many years ago, some of our kutis, these huts we live in the monastery, they're built on stumps and they're up in the forest, and some of the animals like to come past and they rub on the stumps because they've got fleas or whatever, little bugs in their fur, and they like to have a good scratch. And these wombats we have, they're quite strong. So I remember one monk was sitting meditating in his hut, and he didn't realise, but a wombat, he was new to the forest, he'd come from another country, he wasn't used to the animals of our forest. So a wombat came past and it just started rubbing. It was like having its evening rub on his hut, on the stump of the hut, and he's rubbing back and forth, probably enjoying himself. But wombats are very strong, so the whole hut, kuti, started to vibrate, and this wombat was really getting into it, enjoying his itchy rub, and the whole building started to shake. And this monk came out and he was like, oh, it's an earthquake, I better leave the building, it's an earthquake. And he said he was really shaken by the whole experience. And even when later he saw the wombat, he couldn't believe such a, they're not that big a creature, the size of a fat dog, you might say. Such a small creature could cause such an earthquake, because he said, meditating, he felt like the whole earth was shaking. But it's like that, isn't it? Our mind, if we're not seeing the Dhamma, tiny little things can shake it, can't it? The word of somebody else, a feeling that arises in the body, the weather, whatever it may be, just small little things can shake us, they affect us, if the mind is not seeing the Dhamma, not seeing the three characteristics. So the Buddha actually said, if you do contemplate this body and contemplate it in light of the three characteristics, there's various benefits you'll get from that. One of them is you learn to let go of your likes and your dislikes. Your mind becomes very patient, very solid. It's not easily shaken by things. It's not easily disturbed or bothered by the different experiences of the world. He also said, fear and anxiety won't be able to establish itself in your mind if you've contemplated to see the impermanent nature of the body. Not afraid of pain and death, if you see it's impermanent, It's not going to bother you. That thought, why do we get anxious and afraid? Is usually because we're thinking the worst about what may happen to us or our loved ones. But when you ground yourself in mindfulness of the body, then you come to understand, it's not myself anyway. I don't need to identify with it. I can let it go, and the fear subsides, the anxiety subsides. Also, the Buddha said, if you practice mindfulness of the body, your mind can attain peace quickly, because it gets used to setting aside the obsession with always seeking pleasant feelings, running away from unpleasant feelings. One becomes much more patient with the different experiences of a human body, the pleasure, the pain, the comfort, the discomfort. This is why the mind can settle down and attain samadhi. It's because contemplation of the body gets you beyond that constant obsession with how I feel, this itch, that sensation, whether it's external impingement or just the impingement coming from within the body oneself. One learns to just settle the mind and not be so easily swayed by these things. So then one attains samadhi easily. So many benefits when we develop the right understanding of the body. It has to come out of this development of right view. Having heard the Dhamma, we have to practice it, contemplate it, and we have to be developing a sense of inner peace as well, inner well-being, so developing the generosity and the virtuous conduct, and then contemplating the body to see the way it is. The Buddha said if you really practice this well, contemplation of the body is established in your mind, then you can't be overcome by fear. Or if fear arises, you'll quickly let go of it. Because your mindfulness is grounded in the body and you see this body is not a self. And that when you're seeing not self, well, there's no one to get afraid. There's nobody to be shaken by events. You just know, this phenomena, this event, this experience is like this. The body is like this, the feeling is like this. But that's all it is. It arises, it passes away. Well, maybe for tonight I've spoken enough. I'll just encourage you to carry on and don't be put off by the thought of body contemplation. You'll find it bears great rewards for you through your life. If you want to have a nice peaceful old age, then do a lot of body contemplation. Then you won't be too worried about the onset of old age or illness or even death. Your mind will be fully able to accept these truths, be at peace with them. So for tonight, I'll just say this much and wish you well. Annamaya Dhamma Kathaya Sadhu Aranga Dhamma Se